The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three dead stars, and its walls were made of crystal that had been grown over 10,000 years. Inside this hall, 12,000 different species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Today, they had gathered to decide the fate of Earth. High Arbiter Rejection stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old stone. His 7 fingers moved through the air, and a blue planet appeared in the middle of the room. It hung there like a jewel, its oceans bright and its clouds white and pure. "The species called human has been studied," Rejection said. His voice was cold and flat. "They have learned to travel faster than light. They have done this much sooner than we expected. This is a problem." Around the chamber, thousands of aliens watched and listened. Some had many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some were made of light, and some were made of stone. They came from every corner of the galaxy, and they all agreed on one thing: humans were dangerous. The Dominion of Krath spoke next. The Krathi were insect-like creatures who shared one mind across their entire species. Their speaker was a drone with 4 arms and black eyes that reflected nothing. "We have watched the humans carefully," the Krathi said. "They are violent. They fight wars against each other for no reason. They destroy their own planet and call it progress. They are like a disease that will spread across the stars if we do not stop them now." Many in the chamber made sounds of agreement. The humans were young and foolish. They did not understand how the galaxy worked. They needed to be controlled before they caused real damage. Ambassador Chen Wei stood alone on the small platform reserved for new species. She was the only human in the room, and she looked very small compared to the massive aliens around her. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and warm brown eyes. She had spent her whole life solving problems between angry people. Now she faced the biggest problem of all, but she was smiling. She had been smiling since she arrived, and this confused many of the aliens watching her. High Arbiter Rejection then raised his hand for silence. "The Council has made its decision," he announced. It was not a difficult decision. All 12,000 species agree. He turned to face Ambassador Chen directly. His eyes were like black pools with no bottom. "Earth will surrender its ships," he said. "Earth will take apart its space stations. Earth will accept the rule of the Krathi Dominion. They will watch over you and teach you how to behave. In perhaps 10,000 years, you may be ready to join us as equals." The chamber was silent. Every alien watched the small human woman, waiting to see fear in her eyes. Chen Wei bowed low. It was a gesture of respect in their culture, but none of the aliens understood it. To them, it looked like she was giving up. "The people of Earth thank you for thinking about us," she said. Her voice was calm and pleasant, like she was thanking someone for a gift. "But we must say no." The silence changed. It became heavier and more dangerous. "You do not understand," Rejection said slowly. "This is not a question. This is not a trade. The combined fleet of the Council is already on its way to your star system. They will arrive in 30 of your days. You will do as we say, or you will be destroyed." Ambassador Chen nodded as if he had said something very reasonable. "We understand completely, High Arbiter. You have rejected our offer of peaceful friendship." Her smile grew wider. "That is fine. We have been rejected before." She looked around the chamber at all the watching aliens. "Our planet rejected us with ice ages and volcanoes and terrible diseases. Our own bodies rejected us with weakness and short lives. We rejected each other with war and hate and cruelty." She shrugged her small shoulders. "Rejection is something we know very well. You might say we are experts." She touched the small device in her ear and spoke one word in her native language at that exact moment. In 37 different star systems across the galaxy, human ships began to wake up. The Council had thought these ships were simple research vessels, too primitive to be worth attention. They had been wrong. Forexton felt a cold feeling spread through his ancient body. Something was not right. This human should be begging for mercy. She should be crying and promising to obey. Instead, she looked at him like a teacher looks at a student who has made an interesting mistake. 30 days, Chan Wei repeated. That is very kind of you to warn us. Most enemies do not give so much notice. She bowed again. We will use this time well. You cannot fight us, the crafty speaker said. We have conquered 19 species. Our fleet has never lost a battle. Your primitive weapons are like toys to us. Perhaps, Chan agreed. But we have never been good at knowing when to quit. It is one of our many flaws. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back over her shoulder. There is an old human saying, what does not kill us makes us stronger. We have spent our entire history not being killed. It has made us very strong indeed. She walked out of the great chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. High Arbiter Varexton watched her go. He had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species beg and plead and surrender without fighting. He had never seen anyone smile at the promise of destruction. She is mad, the crafty speaker said. All humans must be mad. Varexton said nothing. He was remembering something he had read in the reports about humans. They had a word that did not translate well into any alien language. The word was spite. It meant doing something difficult and painful just to prove that you could. For the first time in centuries, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council felt something like worry. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Alien invaders were coming. The entire galaxy had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be free. The most powerful fleet ever assembled was on its way. To put chains on the human race, thought the world leaders held an emergency meeting. Scientists worked through the night. Military commanders began to plan dot, and ordinary people looked up at the stars and did something the galaxy had never seen before. They laughed. They made jokes about their new alien overlords. They created funny pictures and shared them with friends. They went to work and complained about traffic and argued about sports and fell in love and lived their lives as if nothing had changed. Because something had changed in the human race long ago, back when they were still hunting with pointed sticks. They had learned that fear was a choice. Giving up was a choice. And humans, as a species, were very bad at making those choices. The galaxy wanted them to kneel. Humanity chose to stand. Deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, there was a room that did not exist on any map. The walls were thick enough to survive a nuclear bomb. The doors were heavy enough to stop an army. Inside this room, the most powerful people on Earth gathered to plan the impossible. General Yuki Tanaka stood in front of a wall of glowing screens. She was 60 years old, with sharp eyes and gray hair cut short like a soldier. She had never lost a battle in her life, and she did not plan to start now. "Show me the enemy fleet," she said. The screens changed to show a map of space. A red cloud was moving toward Earth, and inside that cloud were 14,000 alien warships. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. "They will arrive in 28 days, said Director Okonkwo. He was a tall man from Nigeria who ran Earth's intelligence services. "They expect us to surrender before they even fire a shot. They think we are afraid," Tanaka said. "They think we are sane," Okonkwo replied with a small smile. "That is their mistake." What the aliens did not know, what nobody outside this room knew, was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 300 years. Thought it had started in 2089. when a crashed alien probe was found in the Atacama Desert in South America. The probe had been damaged, but its computers still worked. Inside those computers was information that changed everything. Humanity learned that the galaxy was full of life. They learned that thousands of species had built empires among the stars. They learned that these species had rules about who could join their club, and humanity was not invited that the leaders of Earth had made a choice. They did not announce what they had found. They did not panic or celebrate. Instead, they began to plan. Project Prometheus built the ships that everyone could see. These ships were good, but not great. They were impressive enough to be taken seriously, but primitive enough to be underestimated. The aliens would look at these ships and think they understood human technology. Project Pandora built everything else. The Council species have been fighting wars for 6,000 years. General Tanaka explained to her commanders. Their tactics work, so they never change them. Their ships are beautiful and efficient, designed to win battles quickly against enemies who fight the same way they do. She pulled up 2 images on the screen. The first was an alien dreadnought, a ship 3 kilometers long that looked like a work of art. Every line was perfect, every system optimized, every weapon placed exactly where mathematical formulas said it should be. The second image was a human warship called the UE Spite. It was ugly. It looked like someone had taken a dozen different ships and welded them together in a junkyard. Weapons stuck out at strange angles. Extra armor had been bolted onto random spots. It should not have been able to fly. They build ships to win, Tanaka said. We build ships to fight. There's a difference. On the moon, thousands of engineers worked day and night. They were installing weapons that the alien science books said were impossible. But humans had learned something important from those stolen alien computers. The Council had been lying to younger species for thousands of years. They had hidden scientific knowledge to keep others weak. Humanity had found that hidden knowledge, and they had improved it. On Mars, 2 million volunteers sat in special chairs connected to machines. These machines linked their minds together, turning each person into the commander of 1,000 robot drones. When the battle came, every human would fight with the power of an army. On Earth, scientists worked on weapons that had no names yet. Engineers built factories that could make new machines in hours instead of years. Doctors developed medicines that could heal wounds in seconds. Every person with a useful skill was working on something that could help. But the most important preparation was not technological. It was psychological. The aliens had studied human history and seen a species that was always fighting itself. They thought this made humanity weak. They were wrong. Humans knew how to fight when the situation was hopeless. They knew how to keep going when everything said they should give up. They had survived ice ages with nothing but fur clothing and fire. They had survived plagues that killed half their population. They had survived wars that could have destroyed their entire world. They had learned one simple truth. The only way to truly lose is to stop trying. In the alien command ship, Admiral Korvax reviewed the intelligence reports on human military strength. The numbers were not impressive. Humanity had about 200 real warships, plus several thousand smaller support vessels. Against his 14,000 ships, it would not be a battle. It would be an execution. The humans are not evacuating their cities, one of his officers reported with confusion. They are not building shelters. They do not seem to be preparing for attack at all. Of course not, Korvax said. They are primitives. They do not understand what is coming. He was half right. Humans understood exactly what was coming. They just did not care. In a small apartment in Tokyo, an old man taught his grandson how to play chess. The key to the game, he said, is not thinking about the piece you want to move. It is thinking about the piece your enemy does not expect you to move. In a laboratory in Germany, a young woman stared at a screen showing mathematical formulas that should not work. But they did work. Somehow, impossibly, they worked out in a military base in Australia. Soldiers practiced fighting in zero gravity, learning to move and shoot in conditions they had never experienced before, and in homes all around the world. Ordinary people did ordinary things while waiting for the extraordinary to happen. A father read bedtime stories to his children. A couple got married under a sky full of stars. A grandmother baked cookies for her neighbors. A teenager posted a funny video about aliens online and got 50 million views in 3 hours. The aliens watching Earth's communications were deeply confused. They had expected panic. They had expected riots and fear and governments falling apart. Instead, they saw a species that seemed to be enjoying itself. They are making jokes about us, a Crathy analyst reported. They are creating entertainment about the invasion. They are treating this like a game. That is impossible, his supervisor replied. No species acts this way when facing destruction. But humanity was not like other species. They had learned long ago that fear was just another enemy to be defeated. And they had never met an enemy they were not willing to fight. General Tanaka looked at the countdown clock on her wall. 28 days until the alien fleet arrived. 28 days to finish preparing. 28 days until humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to be human. She smiled. They have no idea what they have started, she said quietly. And in the darkness of space, 14,000 alien warships flew toward Earth, confident in their victory. They had never been more wrong about anything in their lives. The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Corvex had chosen the time carefully. According to human clocks, most of Earth would be waking up to their final day of freedom. What he found waiting for him was not what he expected. Every human ship, every satellite, every space station was broadcasting the same message on every frequency. Welcome to Earth space. We apologize in advance. Corvex stared at the message for a long moment. His compound eyes reflected the glow of 14,000 warship screens, all showing the same strange greeting. In 19 conquests, he had received threats, pleas, curses, and prayers. He had never received an apology. What do they mean by that? One of his officers asked nervously. It does not matter, Corvex decided. All ships advance to optimal firing range. We will destroy their orbital stations first. Make an example that the rest of the galaxy will remember. The first wave of Crathy fighters launched like angry insects from their carrier ships. 1,600 small, fast vessels screamed toward Earth, each one worth more money than most small planets. Their pilots were the best in the Dominion, with centuries of combined experience. They were met by a cloud of metal. 40,000 human drones rose from hidden positions like a swarm of silver bees. They moved together as if they were one creature, flowing around the Crathy fighters, through them, between them. Each drone was small and cheap, worth almost nothing compared to an alien fire, but there were so many of them. So very, very many. The drones began to explode. Not randomly, but in precise patterns that cut the Crathy formation into pieces. A fighter would dodge one explosion only to fly directly into another. The alien pilots had been trained to fight other pilots who thought the same way they did. They had never faced an enemy who thought like a hive of wasps. In less than 3 minutes, all 1,600 Crathy fighters were gone. Admiral Corvex watched the debris field expanding where his pilots used to be. His clawed hands gripped his command chair so tightly that the metal began to bend. Impossible, he said. No species can coordinate that many units that quickly. It cannot be done. On the bridge of the U.E.'s Defiance, Captain Sarah Oilerum was grinning so wide her face hurt. She sat in a special chair connected to the neural link network, and through that network she could feel 2 million human minds working together. Each mind controlled 1,000 drones. Together, they were not an army. They were a force of nature. "You know what humans are really good at?" she said to her crew. "Video games. We've been training for this our whole lives without even knowing it." The combined fleet tried to regroup, but they quickly discovered a new problem. The debris from their own destroyed fighters was moving. Human nanobots, machines smaller than dust, had infected the wreckage and were building new weapons from the alien metal. "They are using our dead ships against us," Korvac said with horror. A second wave of Krathi fighters launched. This time, they were more careful, spreading out to avoid being surrounded. It did not help. The human drones adapted instantly, changing their tactics as if they could read the aliens' minds, because in a way, they could. The neural link network processed information faster than any alien computer. Every piece of data from every sensor on every human ship was shared with every connected mind. When a human soldier in Australia noticed a pattern in Krathi movement, a pilot in orbit knew about it 2 seconds later. Ambassador Chen's voice suddenly filled every communication channel in the combined fleet. She was still smiling. Somehow, her smile was worse than any weapon. "The Council gave us 30 days, she said pleasantly. "We only needed 12 to move our ships into position around your fleet. We spent the remaining 18 days studying your ships, your communications, and your computer systems." Every screen on every Council ship flickered. The displays changed to show a drawing made with colored pencils. It showed the alien fleet with big red X marks through each ship. In the corner was a signature, Sophia, age 7. "One of our children asked if she could help with the war effort," Chung continued. "We thought her tactical assessment deserved to be shared." Korvax felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Fear. "All ships full attack," he roared. "Destroy everything." The combined fleet surged forward, abandoning careful tactics for pure aggression. They outnumbered the humans 20 to 1. They had better weapons, bigger ships, more experienced crews. Victory was still possible, if they could just get close enough to use their advantages. The human fleet did something unexpected. Instead of retreating, they attacked. Ships that should have been trying to escape were charging directly at the alien dreadnoughts. Captains who should have been trying to survive were aiming their vessels at enemy engines like missiles. Crews who should have been surrendering were broadcasting music at maximum volume while they fought. The music was loud and fast and angry. The aliens had no word for it, but humans called it heavy metal. "They are not fighting to win," a Krathi officer reported, his voice shaking. "They are fighting because they enjoy it." "That is insane," Korvac said. "Yes," the officer agreed. "But they are very good at being insane." A human destroyer named the Stubborn Donkey had lost half its crew and most of its weapons. Any sensible captain would have withdrawn from battle. Instead, it flew straight at a Krathi carrier 10 times its size and attached itself to the hull like a barnacle. The remaining crew, working in damaged spacesuits with holes patched by tape, began cutting their way into the enemy ship with welding torches. "Surrender and you will be treated well," the Krathi captain broadcast. Confused by what he was seeing. "Thanks for the offer," the human captain replied cheerfully. "But we have not finished introducing ourselves yet. Please hold." 20 minutes later, the Krathi carrier was under human control. Its crew had surrendered after the humans offered them coffee and apologized for the inconvenience. The coffee was very good. The apology seemed sincere. The Krathi did not know what to do with either one. Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated again and again. Human ships that were clearly losing refused to act like it. They kept fighting until they could not fight anymore, and then they found new ways to keep fighting. They turned debris into weapons. They rammed enemy ships. They sent boarding parties onto vessels 10 times larger than their own. And they kept smiling. They kept making jokes. They kept playing music. Admiral Corvex watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that should have been easy to defeat. He finally understood why the Council had been worried about humanity. Thought it was not their technology. It was not their tactics. It was something much more dangerous. Humans did not know how to give up Dodd, and against an enemy who would never stop fighting. Even the mightiest fleet in the galaxy was just another obstacle to overcome. The Battle of Seoul lasted 11 hours. By galactic standards, it should have been over in 11 minutes. The combined fleet had better ships, more experience, and thousands of years of military tradition. They had numbers that should have made victory automatic. But numbers only matter when both sides are playing the same game. Humanity was playing a different game entirely. Every time the alien commanders found a tactic that worked, humans changed everything. A strategy that destroyed 10 human ships would fail completely against the 11th. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting their methods. Humans had spent centuries learning that methods could always be improved. They adapt too quickly. Admiral Corvex reported to the Galactic Council through emergency communication. We destroy 40% of their fleet, and they act like they are winning. They have no fear. They have no sense. On the Council chamber screens, High Arbiter Varix then watched footage from the battle. A human cruiser was burning in space, its hull broken in a dozen places. Half its crew was dead. The survivors were working in emergency suits, exposed to the vacuum of space, manually reloading weapons that the ship's damaged computers could know. Longer control. They were singing. Varix then had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen courage, and he had seen madness. He had never seen them combined so perfectly. Why do they continue? He asked, genuinely confused. They could negotiate. They could accept our terms. They could live. The Krathi Hive Mind speaker answered from across the chamber. We do not understand either. Our psychologists say this behavior should be impossible. Survival instinct should force them to surrender. But humanity had spent millions of years fighting against instinct. They had learned to ignore cold when it told them to stop. They had learned to ignore hunger when it told them to give up. They had learned to ignore fear when it told them to run. In the battle raging above Earth. These lessons were being applied with terrible efficiency. A human frigate called the Never Again had lost its captain, its weapons, and its engines. It was dead in space, a floating coffin with no hope of escape. The alien destroyer that had crippled it moved in to finish the job. The 37 surviving crew members of the Never Again had other plans. They had spent the last hour rewiring their reactor. When the alien destroyer got close enough, they triggered a controlled overload that turned their dying ship into a bomb. The explosion destroyed both vessels. Madness, the Krathi speaker said when reports of this reached the Council. Complete madness. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle through live feeds from satellites and surviving ships. They saw their defenders dying in flashes of light. They saw the alien fleet still overwhelming in its size, and something strange happened. Instead of despair, people felt pride. Instead of fear, they felt determination. Every human who died in space became a hero whose story would be told for generations. Every sacrifice became proof that humanity was worth fighting for. In Snow Hollow, an old woman named Maria Santos was interviewed by a news crew. Her grandson was serving on one of the ships in the battle zone. She did not know if he was alive or dead. The aliens told us we were not good enough, she said calmly. They told us to kneel down and accept their rule. My grandson up there is giving them our answer. She smiled, and her smile was very similar to Ambassador Chun's. We Santa's family. We have never been good at kneeling. By hour 9 of the battle, something unexpected had happened. The combined fleet had lost 60% of its ships. But they had not been destroyed. They had been captured. Human boarding parties moved through alien vessels with cheerful efficiency. Their combat suits were decorated with cartoon characters and joke phrases. They offered water and snacks to aliens who surrendered. They apologized for any inconvenience. A Krathi captain, who had commanded ships for 200 years, found himself sitting in his own brig, drinking Earth coffee and talking to a human marine who looked young enough to be his great-grandchild. "Why do you not kill us?" the captain asked. "In our history, captured enemies are always killed. It is efficient." The young marine shrugged. "What would be the point? You are not evil. You were just following orders from people who made a bad decision. That is not worth dying for." He refilled the captain's coffee cup. "Besides, this stuff is too good to waste on dead people." The captain had no response to this. He drank his coffee and tried to understand a species that fought like demons but treated prisoners like guests. Admiral Corvex watched his fleet falling apart. Ships that had served the Dominion for centuries were being boarded and captured by humans, who seemed to think war was some kind of party. His flagship was surrounded by a cloud of human drones that could destroy him in seconds, but had not fired a single shot. A communication screen flickered to life. Ambassador Chun appeared, still wearing that mysterious smile. "Admiral," she said politely, "I think it is time for us to talk about how this battle is going to end." "You cannot win," Corvex replied, though his voice had lost its confidence. "Even if you capture every ship, the Council will send more. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." "We do not want to fight the entire galaxy," Chun said. "We never did. We just wanted to make a point." "What point?" "That we are not going to be easy to push around." Chun's smile softened slightly. "Admiral, your fleet came here to conquer us. You have killed thousands of our people. You have destroyed ships full of our sons and daughters." She paused. "And we are still offering you coffee and a chance to surrender peacefully. What does that tell you about us?" Corvex thought about this for a long moment. He thought about the singing crews on burning ships. He thought about the child's drawing that had appeared on every screen in his fleet. He thought about the way humans had turned his own destroyed fighters into weapons without any hint of hatred. "It tells me," he said slowly, "that you are either the most forgiving species in the galaxy or the most terrifying. Why not both?" Chun asked. The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with a negotiation. Admiral Corvex agreed to withdraw what remained of his fleet. In exchange, humans would return the captured ships and crews unharmed. As the alien vessels prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Human ships flew alongside them, not as enemies but as escorts. Medical teams boarded damaged alien vessels to help with repairs. Food and supplies were transferred to ships that needed them. A Krathi officer asked a human medic why they were helping enemies who had tried to destroy them. The medic looked confused by the question. "You are not our enemies anymore," she said simply. "Now you are just people who need help." "That is what we do." The officer did not understand, but he remembered this moment for the rest of his very long life. And somewhere in the Galactic Council chamber, High Arbiter Vorix then watched the end of the battle with new eyes. He had expected humanity to be cruel in victory. He had expected revenge and punishment and demands. Instead, he saw mercy. He saw kindness. He saw a species that could have burned its enemies to ash, but chose instead to offer them coffee and conversation. For the first time, he began to wonder if the Council had made a terrible mistake. Not by attacking humanity, but by underestimating what kind of species they really were. The humans had taught the galaxy a lesson that day. But the lesson was not about war. It was about what happens after the war is over. 3 weeks after the Battle of Seoul, Ambassador Chen Wei returned to the Galactic Council chamber. She walked the same path she had walked before, across the same crystal floors, past the same watching aliens. But everything had changed. The first time she had come here, 12,000 species had looked at her with contempt. They had seen a representative of a primitive, violent race that needed to be controlled. They had seen a problem to be solved. Now they saw something else entirely. The Dominion of Krath was absent from the chamber. Their homeworld had received a delivery the day after the battle. 70% of their invasion fleet returned with full crews and minimal damage. The ships had been cleaned, repaired, and restocked with supplies. Attached to each one was a card that read, "You left these in our solar system. Please collect at your convenience." No hard feelings. The gesture had confused the Krathi completely. They had expected punishment. They had expected demands for payment or territory. They had not expected politeness. High Arbiter Vorax then stood at the center of the chamber, looking older and more tired than he had 3 weeks ago. He watched Ambassador Chun take her position on the small platform, still wearing that gentle smile. "You could have destroyed the Krathi fleet," Vorax then said. It was not a question. "Yes," Chun agreed. "You could have followed them back to their homeworld. You could have taken revenge. You could have made the entire galaxy fear you. Also yes." Vorax then, as ancient eyes, studied her carefully. "Then why did you not do these things? In 10,000 years, no species has ever had such a chance and not taken it. This does not follow any pattern we know." Chun's smile became warmer. It was the smile of a teacher who sees a student finally asking the right question. "High Arbiter, the people of Earth do not want to rule anyone. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not even want to prove that we are better than anyone." She looked around the chamber at the thousands of watching aliens. "We just wanted you to understand one simple thing about us." She touched a control, and the space above her head filled with images. Pictures from human history flashed past. Ice ages that covered half the world. Volcanoes that blackened the sky. Plagues that killed millions. Wars that nearly destroyed everything. And after each disaster, rebuilding. People helping each other stand up. Cities rising from ashes. Life continuing against all odds. "We have been fighting to survive since we climbed down from the trees," Chun said. "We have fought our planet, our biology, each other, and ourselves. We have never stopped. And we never will." Her voice grew stronger. "You gave us 30 days and called it mercy. Our ancestors survived ice ages with nothing but stone tools. Our grandparents invented weapons that could destroy the world and then chose not to use them. Our children grew up knowing that aliens existed and decided it was exciting instead of frightening." She paused, letting the images fade. "We are not a species that gives up. It is not pride or stubbornness. It is just who we are. We do not know how to surrender. It is not written in our code." The chamber was completely silent. 12,000 species waited to hear what would come next. "So here are humanity's terms," Chun continued. "We will join the Galactic Council as full and equal members. We will share all of our technology freely, including the 17 scientific discoveries that the Council has been hiding from younger species for thousands of years." She saw shock ripple through the chamber. Many species had suspected that the Council was hiding knowledge, but nobody had ever been able to prove it. "We found your secrets," Chun said calmly. "Hidden in the files of that crashed probe you thought we did not understand. And we improved on them." She smiled again. "We are very good at improving things. What else do you demand?" Vorax then asked. His voice was careful, ready for threats. "We will defend any species that asks for our protection. We will help anyone who needs help. We will never fire the first shot in any conflict." Chun's expression became serious. "But if anyone ever tries to make us kneel again, we will remind the entire galaxy why the universe learned to fear persistence." She let that warning sink in before her smile returned. We are the species that made friends with wolves by feeding them scraps from our fires. We are the species that looked at horses and thought, I could ride that. We are the species that saw a massive ocean and built boats to cross it just because we wanted to know what was on the other side. Her voice filled with warmth and pride. We will adopt you, all of you, whether you want us to or not. We will bring you our music and our food and our terrible jokes. We will share our coffee, which is honestly one of the best things we have ever created. And in 100 years, you will wonder how the galaxy ever existed without us. She bowed one final time. Those are our terms. Take them or leave them. But either way, we are not going anywhere. The vote that followed was not unanimous. Several species still feared what humanity might become. Others worried about the changes humans would bring to a galaxy that had been stable for thousands of years, but most voted yes, because they had seen something during the Battle of Sol that they had never seen before, a species that could have been monsters, but chose to be friends instead. 1,000 years later, the galaxy was a different place. Human music played in clubs on alien worlds. Human restaurants served strange and delicious food on 100,000 planets. Human doctors had cured diseases that had plagued species for millions of years. Human engineers had built wonders that previous generations would have called impossible, but the biggest change was harder to measure. Humans had brought something to the galaxy that it had not known it was missing. The idea that everyone deserves kindness, even former enemies. The belief that helping others makes everyone stronger. The crazy notion that strangers can become family if you just give them a chance. They called it pack bonding, and it spread like a gentle virus through the stars dot in the Council archives. The record of the Battle of Sol was preserved as a lesson for future generations. Attached to it was a note written by the historian, who had studied humanity's entry into galactic civilization. Other species reached for the stars because they could. Humans reached for the stars because someone told them they should not. Perhaps we should have known better than to say no to them. And somewhere in the deep black of unexplored space, a human exploration vessel received a distress signal from a world nobody had ever heard of. The species there was dying, their sun failing, their hope extinguished. They had broadcast their cry for help without expecting an answer. Captain Maya Oilerin, granddaughter of the famous Sarah Oilerin, who had commanded the Defiance during the Battle of Sol, looked at her crew. They were a mix of humans and aliens, all wearing the same uniform, all sharing the same mission. "Wow," she said with a familiar smile. "Let us see what we can do about this." The ship turned toward the dying world. Its crew began preparing medical supplies, engineering equipment, and emergency shelters. Someone started a pot of coffee dot, and the galaxy, watching from 1,000 monitoring stations, nodded in quiet understanding. This was what humans did. This was who they were. They found problems that seemed impossible, and they fixed them anyway. They found people who had lost hope, and they gave them hope again. They found a cold universe, and they made it a little bit warmer just by being in it. The people on that dying world did not know it yet, but they were about to be adopted, whether they wanted to be or not, because that was the human way. Smile at rejection. Help the hopeless, and never, ever give up. Not bad for a species that started out throwing rocks at each other. Not bad at all.